Hello guys, today we're back looking at the SEM 822 little bulldozer here. In the last video we were trying to get the tracks running. We had a motor like this, but it wasn't really able to turn the tracks. We were thinking we might have to go to a bigger battery. But then I seen on I think AliExpress that there was this little, actually I think it was banggood.com, that had this little motor here. The same sort of idea, a 90-degree turn on the gearbox, but unlike this one, which has the worm gear at the output of the motor, this one has the entire gearbox coming through and then it goes to the worm gear. So I think that's going to give it a little bit more strength, and it is quite a bit slower than this other motor, so that's probably another hint that it's geared down quite a bit. I'll give this motor a little bit of power here and I'll just show you how fast it turns relative to the other one. So you should be able to see as the flat surface comes round. It's not rotating very quickly, but then this is a track machine intended to push, so it's not really intended to go very fast. This one, on the other hand, it was going a little bit faster. So the motors are the same here, so the difference in speed is purely down to the gearbox, which means that this one is geared much lower than this one. Okay, well the next thing I'll do is just to put it, I have the track kind of put together here, so I'll just push the motor into the gear here, and we'll just see how easily it can turn the tracks, or if it can turn them at all, so that we can compare to the previous video. I'll try it like this. I have to hold the plastic here together, because if you remember, it's not actually bolted together, it's just press fit, and our little spring here kind of wants to push it apart all the time, so I have to try and hold that together and hold the motor and hold the battery. So let's see how well this goes. Off to a bad start. That's running off the track because I'm not holding it straight. This mightn't work all that well for demo. Okay, well, getting it to spin while I'm holding it's not working out too well, so I'll just solder 2 wires to this and we'll hook it up to the battery that way. I added the 2 wires to the motor here and it's just taped in there, so hopefully it'll last long enough for us to get an idea of how fast this moves, or that it can actually move the track at all. And also we're kind of hoping that this pressed fit part here doesn't pop off as well. Let's just see how it goes. I'd say that's pretty much exactly the kind of speeds I'm looking for there. The only problem I have now is that all of the motors are 90 degrees like this, so they're offset from the central shaft, and that means that on one side the gearbox is below the axle and on the other side it's above the axle. I'd rather have them both above the axle, so it looks like this central gear is a press fit gear. So I think what I'll try and do is tap out the central shaft here and see, is it possible to reverse the direction of this shaft coming but it entering from the other side, so that both our left and right motors would be above the axle. So that's what I'll try to do now and see if that works. I managed to get the axle turned around on one of these, so you can see now that they basically are like a straight axle. The 2 motors are on the same side of our axle shaft. Now, I don't want you to think that this was a particularly simple thing to do. When I removed the shaft the first time, I did break it. Basically what I did was drill a hole in a piece of wood that was larger than this diameter of this shaft, put it face down. There's a lip here, so I made sure that we were flat on this kind of silver surface, not the brass part, So the silver surface nice and flat, and I tapped it at the back with a hole punch, just one with a sharp point on it. That was going okay, but then I sort of hit the hole punch slightly wrong, and the whole thing twisted and just snapped this piece off. So that can easily happen. So just so you know, it's not simple. This is a very tight fit in the gear that's here. So you have to keep everything lined up, make sure that this face is flat on the base that you're tapping into, because if you don't keep that flat, then you risk that the whole thing goes out of shape, and it's never going to work. So this broke on me, but I actually had 3 lower gear ones that I was thinking to use in an excavator to control the boom. So you can see here, actually this is I started when I very first started to get the pin loose, I was using the hole punch, but the hole punch is much larger diameter than this hole that there is here. So once it was started to get loose, I used this nail. I just filed down the end of it so that it's flat, and then when this shaft had moved in slightly, the nail just sat there perfectly on top of the shaft, and all I had to do was tap it through then, nice and gentle. Well, you have to give it a hard enough hit, but just nice and carefully so that I didn't twist anything. So after I had the axle tapped out of this low gear ratio 1, I just swapped the gear around so that well, I'm not sure if it mates to the shaft in a particular way, but I just turned it around to make sure that it was in the same configuration as it had been previously, and then I just tapped the axle in from the other side. Now when I got the axle tapped in all the way, it was very hard to twist. The whole thing had tightened, so tapped it in all the way and then just tapped it back slightly so that the gear was off this face, and it was still a little bit tight. So I caught this end in the drill, put plenty of oil on it, and just spun it for a little while, put a little bit more oil on it, spun it again, and that loosened it up. I didn't have it on the gearbox. I screwed it off first before I put it in the drill. So you can see there's 2 screws either side of this part. So I screwed this off so it was away from the worm gear. I just held the silver piece here, the silver little frame, got this shaft in the drill and spun that, and that just got it loose enough. So once you could twist this part by hand with it unscrewed, then it was good enough, I thought, and I put it all back together, and it seems to be the same speed as the original unmodified one. So to test this out now, I'll just tape both of these motors into the body. Hopefully they'll hold, and we'll just see if it can drive itself back and forward a little bit. Well, both motors are in there now, so there's a slight possibility this will work for a couple of seconds anyway. Remember, these things are just press fit on for now, so they're probably just going to pop straight off, but we'll give it a go. Well, it's working, but it's kind of locking up, which is not surprised because the 2 motors are not straight. They're taped in there. I can see this one's trying to twist as the load's kind of coming on, so that's not what we need. The next thing we need to do is make a 3D printed bracket that holds the 2 motors, holds them straight, and holds them nice and level on the bottom of the model. But that test did show us that the tracks are turning. The 3.7 volt battery is doing the job, no problem. So that leaves us a little bit more space in the model. So now that I'm happy enough this is all sort of working, the next thing to do is to 3D print the bracket for the motors. Find out how I'm going to secure these side pieces in a little bit better. I might just screw 2 stainless steel bolts through the side of this just to make sure that it's definitely nice and strong, everything's straight. So you'll see the 2 bolts, but at least functionally it'll work perfectly. Maybe we could drill straight through and screw everything to this little post that's sticking out here. That might hold it all together nice and strong. If we get our bracket, get the 2 motors down here nice and level, that leaves loads of room above the 2 motors to get a servo to control our ripper on the back here, so that'll be pretty cool. And then we'll probably have our battery up at the very top of this engine compartment here, because there's so much space there. That's pretty ideal. We'll be able to get our control board in there as well, and well, maybe we'll try and get the control board into the cab some way, just so that it's, you know, the transmitter's up on top. That might be a little bit better. But we've a good bit to do. I'm going to have to go off and design the little carrier for the 2 motors as the next step. But that's all I have for today. I hope you're enjoying this build. I'm looking forward to seeing how this little thing performs when we get it on our coffee grind field. So if you're enjoying the videos, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. That all helps the channel to grow. And to make sure you don't miss out on the next videos, make sure to get subscribed and get that bell on so that you'll get a notification. But that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for watching.